This is James Lutton for Round 8 Boxing. Delighted to join with Grace Buckle. Grace, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for joining me today.
No
I
problem.
wanted to get you on today because I feel like we've got something in common. We
Mm.
grew up with deaf parents.
Serious?
Yeah, for real.
Oh, we got another coder. Come
So
on.
I wanted to get you on because I found it really fascinating that obviously your full-time work is interpreter, your first language is British Sign Language.
Yeah,
You've used your hands, they're your main tools all your life,
yeah,
at home and now in the ring at work as well.
yeah.
So I wanted to get you on just to sort of see how that works. So just talk to me about firstly growing up in a deaf household.
Okay, wow. There's so much to draw from, really. Growing up in a deaf household, it wasn't without its challenges. Obviously, having parents who are deaf, um, brings a different dynamic, you know. Firstly, how they access the world has a lot of challenges. So, seeing how my parents, worked their way through society was very eye-opening for me. Just, your normal everyday stuff that you wouldn't really I don't know, really pay attention to. So, for instance, subtitles on the telly, making sure. And back then, it was teletext 888. I don't know if you remember that,
Yeah,
but yeah. So um, small things like that kind of showed me that my parents had to try and make things work for them in a world that wasn't really considerate of deaf people.
absolutely. That's mad. I forgot all about that 888, and I always remember
Yeah,
growing up.
eight.
My
Now
mum
captions are everywhere,
is
but
it.
there's been times where my mum wanted to watch her favorite program and there was no subtitles. So sometimes she would feel no way in asking me to stand and interpret the show for her. Nowadays I don't think is best practice, but those are things that I've done for my mum growing up.
So it's clearly set you off into your path into your career now as well, which we'll come on to in a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk about your start into boxing. How did you get into boxing, and were your parents approving of that?
So how I started boxing, it was just like an 8 week fundraiser, a charity boxing match. You train for 8 weeks and then we'll throw you in the ring with someone who's also been on the program. And yeah, initially it was just a way of getting fit and just wanted to try my hand at something new. My parents were very supportive. My mum and my dad, I think, were there at my first fight. Correct me if I'm wrong. My mum has been to see me fight at Haringey Box Cup when I competed for the first time in 2020. I think it was 23. My mum came out for that. She's always sort of checking in to see how it's going. She does worry naturally. Seeing your child fighting, potentially getting hurt, is not something that brings a lot of sort of like pleasure to my parents really. And so, she's always worried in that respect, but she is very proud of everything that I've achieved so far. Same for my dad. Very supportive. He's always sort of like bigging me up to his friends, posting me on socials. So yeah,
Talk to me. So your full-time job is an interpreter.
yeah,
How does that work in terms of hand injuries, things like that? Has there ever been a time where you've gone, oh, I'm struggling here to
yeah,
do my job because I've got a hand injury or whatever it may be?
yeah. So injury is kind of part and parcel of any sports. Not just boxing. And I think I'm somebody who tries to take extra care, like whether it's like warm up before you train, cool down after you train, wrapping my hands properly, just to make sure I'm mitigating the risks of getting injured. I have had injuries, I've had a trapped nerve, I've had problems with my thumbs. And I remember even having to go to A&E once because I like had hurt it so bad. I think I just caught it in sparring. And back then we were in lockdown, thankfully. So like being seen was like pretty straightforward. And the doctor who saw me, he gave me sort of like a brace to put on my hand. And sort of it healed up fairly quickly. Thankfully I haven't sustained sort of any sort of long lasting injuries that have like affected my ability to work. But yeah, it's just about trying to take care, being mindful, I guess.
No, definitely. So you sort of started off in sort of white collar or charity fight sort of thing. You've
Yeah,
transitioned through to amateurs, Harringay
yeah,
Cups, etc. You've had
yeah.
a pretty successful amateur career so far. Just talk to me about that and what your highlights been so far.
Yeah. So I started boxing sort of, I think about 9 years ago. Again, just charity fundraisers. And, it started out at Miguel's. I was there for quite some time. And, you know, I think the developments was like the starting point for me, really. And that was in October 2022. We went up to Oxford Banbury. It was me, Mike, and Kitson, my coaches at the time. And we fought semi-finals and finals. And that was sort of my first taste of what the amateurs were like. And that kind of gave me confidence that, okay, again, it was just my first amateur bout. So it gave me an idea of sort of where I was at, because up until that point, I had just done white collar. And to be honest, the levels are slightly different. Um, Off the back of that, we went and did the nationals for the first time in 2023. I fought Emily Asquith and won on a 3-2 split. And again, it was a close one, a highlight for me as well, because Mike said, if it's close, you're not going to get it. So when they did sort of raise my hand, I was slightly surprised, but I can see how we edged the fight, to be honest. I think I was just really, really hungry, a really raw boxer. And we've obviously been able to sort of like develop that over time. Getting on the England squad, big highlight for me. I've just had my third assessment, so I'm back on the team for the 2025 to 2026 season. So I'm looking forward to doing more sort of international tournaments, and hopefully we can qualify for the Worlds in September.
Do you find boxing and I suppose, for anybody's sport in general, doing something like that as a passion, is it a bit of a escapism for you from the real world?
Do you know what? Boxing, I don't know if it's an escapism, but it kind of like adds layers to my life. It just adds a bit more to what I'm already doing. I think in some ways it's a good stress relief. I think maybe if you've had a long day at work, going and hitting the bags is not a bad thing. It's a good way to blow off some steam. You've got the social aspects of it. So, like, when I go to the gym, I'm seeing a lot of my peers, a lot of my friends, other boxers, and it's always a good vibe. It's a good environment. Seeing like other boxers coming up, celebrating them, their successes, supporting them when they're going up to fight. You know, yeah, I can't say it's an escapism, because real life is real life. It's as much as like, my head is in boxing, there's still stuff outside of life that, you've got a balance, whether it's like family life, friends, just your day-to-days that, your errands that you've got to do, whether it's doing your laundry or, grabbing the boys from school, anything. Like it's, you just got to find a way to balance everything, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, your work and boxing have sort of crossed paths a couple of times now as well.
Yeah.
About interpreting at events,
Yeah.
Royal Albert Hall,
Yeah.
Jonas, Lauren Price,
Yeah.
Daniel Dubois, Anthony Joshua, these major events, and you're there. Obviously, you love boxing anyway,
Yeah.
but they're working, interpreting, and you also relate that back to these fans who are watching who
Yeah.
don't have the same experience as everyone else, I suppose. How has that been?
Mhm. That has been incredible. Do you know what I mean? Like I never realized how the two could overlap. For me, it's always felt like they're two separate entities. But it's just, I don't know, I think it's just a blessing that like two things that I'm really passionate about have found a way to like come together. And yeah, it feels great that like even people like Marie Pascal, she's the sort of co-founder or founder of Performance Interpreting, and they have some of the big contracts with these different venues that offer access. And yes, incredible. Seeing AJ and Dubois, live, getting to watch that alongside the deaf audience and, you know, be in that space with them. I'm working, but I'm also enjoying myself. So it's like you get the best of both worlds. You know, I do, you know, I am really appreciative that I am doing something I love, and you know, boxing is something else I love. So I just am really grateful, honestly.
Talk me through the process. So when you're working a show and you're interpreting for the deaf audience,
Yeah.
is it that you're interpreting? Obviously, you're going to let them watch the action during rounds, but what is it you do sort of mid rounds before after fights?
Yeah. So the first show I ever did was the AJ and Dubois fight. And what we do, we just tend to just get a lay of the land, figure out sort of where I'll be stationed. And they had sort of like an access area where, you know, all the deaf audience members were seated. And so, you know, they had me set up there. They had a stand as well, because actually we had I think it was either Liam Gallagher or Noel Gallagher, correct me if I'm wrong, but he did sort of a performance at Wembley, and that was like very last minute. So I had to like try and digest like three of the songs and all their lyrics as much as I possibly could within the time span I was given. But you know, it could be interpreting songs, for instance, and obviously we had the undercard. So essentially what I would do would be like announcing who's fighting, the referees, whether it's a title fight, um, and then at the end I would interpret the results, you know, who won, who lost. There were interviews as well, so I interpreted the interviews. I can't hear the commentary that people might hear when if they're watching on the telly, so that's a bit of a relief because, you know, the commentary, you know, it's non-stop really. But I think, you know, deaf audience members, they're probably just going to want to focus on the action, even if, you know, there was commentary that I could hear. But yeah, that's about it really. So I get to sit down and watch the bouts, and yeah, it's just pretty chill really.
It's not a bad night's work, that is it?
It's not bad at all, yeah.
I believe you got into the interpreting boxing shows through Daniel Dubois' sister Miriam. Is that right?
So
She's some sort of influence on it.
uh-huh. So yeah, Daniel Dubois has a sister called Miriam Dubois, and she is, you know, she is deafened, hard of hearing, deaf, uses BSL. I've known her for many, many years. She's a good friend of mine. We did the Deaf Cycling Project in 2022. We were running classes over at the Olympic Park, and that was pretty good. We did that for the summer. That was just before I did Devs. But yeah, Mim asked if I could do the Royal Albert Hall because obviously her sister was fighting on that card. And for some reason, she wasn't able to get in contact with Performance Interpreting. And, you know, I have sort of a professional relationship with them. So I kind of like chased it a little bit. They were able to get in touch with the venue, and we were able to make it happen. I was booked for the event, and Mim was there with her family to support Caroline. So for the Royal Albert Hall, I would say yes, that was definitely Mim's influence. That was Mim's doing, yeah. And I think when it comes to access, deaf people, if there's any events that you want to go to, just ask questions, reach out to the venues, see what can be done, because you never know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just try not to come back onto boxing. For you, what do you hope the future holds? You just mentioned, obviously, that England's got back on the international tournaments.
Yeah,
I think Commonwealth Games are coming up fairly soon.
yeah, next year.
Next year, is it? Yeah. Is that your sort of next big target, I suppose?
Um, well, I'm not sure. It would be nice, but it just depends on what my coaches want to do, what we feel like is the best move. But I think the first step would be to try out for the Worlds and then see where we go from there. We've got Haringey Box Cup coming up in June, so we'll be doing that. And if I've got an opponent for the Tri Nations, which is end of this month, then I'll be doing that. And then, yeah, Worlds, potentially Winter Box Cup, because I've not done that tournament yet, and it would be nice to close the year like that. And then that will bring us into 2026. So Who knows? Maybe Commonwealth Games, maybe we'll turn pro, or I don't know. Maybe I'll turn pro. Maybe I'll hang up my gloves. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, it would be nice to go pro, to be honest. It'll be nice.
You mentioned the Worlds, that's September in Liverpool, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
4th to the 14th of September. Make sure you lot get your tickets. Come support the GB squad. Support whoever else, you want to support. It's going to be in Liverpool. It's going to be a great event. It's on home soil. So, let's show up.
100%. You mentioned the professional. I was going to ask you, turning professional, is that a must for you? Is it still up for debate? What do you
Mm.
do on that front?
It's not a must because, I'm so content with everything I've done in boxing. But if it happens, I wouldn't be mad at it. Do you know what I mean? It would be nice to see what it's like on the pro scene. It's obviously very different from the amateurs. I'm still learning, still developing. So, if we can make it into a full-time career, then I'm not opposed.
Do you think there may be any difficulties in turning pro because of your job working full time? I know obviously there's a lot of people
Yeah,
who do work full time jobs as well, but
yeah.
I mean, is it any different to what you're doing now, really?
Yeah, so obviously I'm balancing, work and, training. So, it can be difficult, but it's just about time management. Like this morning, I was up at 6 a.m. to go and do my cycle, and, tomorrow I'm back in the gym with Q. I'll train again in the evening. I'll work on a Wednesday, and I try and balance it out. I'm a freelancer, so there's a bit more flexibility. So if I've got a tournament coming up or about, I will scale back on the amount of bookings I take. And if we've got a bit more of a quiet time, I'll scale up. So I really just try and balance it out. And thankfully, I've got a job that allows me to sort of, you know, choose when I work really. And if I was to go pro, yeah, I've seen that a lot of people try to balance out work and training, but then you've got pros that are doing it full time. So that's sort of the level of commitment that you have to contend with. So it's just about how much you're willing to put in. It would be nice if I could go pro. I don't know if I could envision me not interpreting anymore because it's just such a integral part of who I am. But I guess we would just have to see what the workload was like.
Absolutely. And the last question I was going to ask you is boxing, you need dedication, discipline, maturity, etc. Do you think growing up in a deaf household has helped you in any aspect for your boxing? Did it make you mature a lot sooner than other kids, for example?
Yeah, 100%. It just like showed me that the world can sometimes be harsh. The world isn't always considerate of everybody. And sometimes you just got to push through it. My parents are just, people that have like had to face adversity time and time again. Their needs aren't being met, and still they like, push through. And I feel like my mum especially, she's just a very strong character. And she's somebody that, shows me that like it doesn't matter sort of what your background is, kind of any hardship you've had to go through. If you want to achieve something, you can do it. My mum was someone who encouraged me to become an interpreter. And, I'll always be thankful to her for that because, sometimes, I grew up in South Norwood and, it just wasn't always the best environment. And you don't know what you don't know until you try and step out of that landscape. So, going to uni just showed me that there's more to life and, nothing is impossible. Um, and yeah, I think, you just have to be, I say you have to be strong, but it's like sometimes you don't want to have to be that. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to have to be hardened in life. You do want to just be. But it's definitely given me a lot of character, a lot of resilience, and that has definitely shone through with boxing because like I'm just so like willed. I'm so like I don't take no for an answer. Like we will win this. I've got a winner's mentality, and I'll put the work in as well. I don't just expect things to come to me. Hope is not a strategy, based on a program I watched the other day. But it's like you really do have to, map things out, take it step by step, and you'll get there. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, resilience is definitely something that's been a part of my whole life. You know.
Absolutely. Grace, I'll leave it there. I want to thank you very much for your time. Real pleasure speaking to you. Really interesting as well. It's nice to
Yeah.
hear the different story about
Yeah.
what I can resonate to as well.